Hey, hello everyone, and thanks for joining our CRM training for new staff today as our first session of the week. So appreciate you jumping on with us. And so without further ado, I will pass it over to our CRM training team, CRM support team, I should say. Andrew Quinn, please go ahead.
Hey folks, my name's Andrew. I'm with the CRM help desk team, and I am joined today with my other colleague Fraser. And we're going to be going through some, I guess, high-level CRM topics. If you've never used CRM before, I think this will be great. And for the rest of you, it'll be a refresher. We've changed up the normal way we're going to go about doing this. So if at any point in time you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll definitely get to them by the end of the session. It is somewhat staggered in how we're going to walk through this, so some of the questions may be answered later on. But we will get to all of them. So without any further ado here, just a refresher that the tool CRM can be found at the link below, crm.liberal-caucus.ca. For anyone who's unfamiliar with CRM, the tool was originally created by NGP Van and used by the Obama, Clinton, and most recently Biden campaigns, and of course, as well as LPC. For those of you who are familiar with Liberalist, it is definitely similar but distinct. So you'll definitely recognize some of the layout and tools, but there's some distinct and different tools in CRM that are not in Liberalist and vice versa. As a friendly reminder, canvassing should only ever be done in Liberalist. CRM is only for casework and nonpartisan work. Information is not shared between both platforms. The data in CRM stays in CRM. As well, the information remains private to your committee, which in this case just means your office. So everyone who would be on your MP team, but it is not shared with other offices. I know we get that question a lot, especially with new MPs, that they're concerned that data might go elsewhere. I can confirm it is only ever available to your individual offices. The way we've structured this, we're first going to cover a handful of slides and some high-level overview stuff and some of the core concepts. But then we're going to dive right into CRM and kind of show you how to use the tool itself. And again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to get to all of them. But we do have almost an hour of packed full material here, so please bear with us as we get going. Why do we use CRM? Well, the main part here is that it's really helpful to keep track of trends in your correspondence and casework. It can be used for data entry, so both personal information and various data points, casework management, as well as creating reports. It's important because it keeps a history of your constituents' interactions with your office. It assists you and your boss in building and maintaining good local relationships, which is, of course, why we're all here. Identifying issues of importance to your constituents, as well as keeping contact information relevant. We do actually have a report that goes out every Friday to authorized people in every MP office, including the member of parliament, that gives an overview on casework, on what's happened the past week. However, if you don't enter any data, the report will not be accurate, and it's going to show up to your boss like you've done nothing all week, which I know is never the case. But one of the many reasons why staying on top of the data entry is important. There's also a bunch of other reporting tools available for different data points in your office that will be of assistance to you, and we'll cover some of those. But the main thing here is that you can keep track of those interactions between the constituents in your office. I know from past experience, inevitably, your boss will ask you at 5:30 on a Friday after you're trying to get out of the office, "Hey, can I have like Jim's contact information for this thing tomorrow morning?" It's really easy if you have entered all the information into CRM. You're not digging through emails or old text messages at 7:30 at night trying to get that information. Again, it just really makes it really easy for both you to manage your office as well as for the MP to follow up on any of these caseworks or relationships that they have in their constituency. So the main data points that we track here are addresses, email addresses, telephone numbers, casework, and then activist codes. Activist codes are probably the main piece here, and you'll see a theme if you come to the rest of the training, I think, for the rest of the week, as well as leading into the new year. We're slightly changing how our best practices on how we want to be tracking this stuff, and activist codes will be the main piece there. They're great for tracking interests. You've probably already used them if you've done correspondence entry or ever have an ongoing list of your prime minister or PM, or MP holiday cards. There's also one there for new citizens. There will be a new, I'm sure you'll hear shortly from LRB either this week or in the coming weeks. There will be a new report that I think that will make it much easier on the LRB side to see kind of what the main pain points and kind of ongoing correspondence things are in caucus. And that'll all be driven around activist codes, which is one of the main reasons they're important to enter. And we'll cover that both now and as well as I think Friday on the correspondence, targeted email, and communications training. We'll cover, again, you'll hear this frequently from me, cover this in a little bit more detail once you jump into CRM, but there are two sides to CRM. There is the shared contact side, as well as the My Voter side. The shared contact sides is basically constituents who've had a previous history with your MP, or basically if you're a new MP, any previous history with a previous MP in that office, I should say Liberal MP in that office. Relationships that have been built over the MP's time in government, and what you'll normally find here is that there's more data but less constituents. By that we mean you've entered data points, you've entered phone numbers or email addresses or changes in address or casework, as opposed to My Voters, which is basically the Elections Canada list of electors, the same one that LPC would get. For other use cases is exactly what populates My Voters here. So again, that would be almost all of your constituents who have the right to vote, but no, way less data. It's only the data that's available from Elections Canada, which is address and name. And the perfect workflow here, in theory, would be someone walks into your office, you have not communicated with them before, you go over to the My Voters tab, you find Sally. You move her over to shared contacts, and you add more data in shared contacts and communicate with her from there. The other way that My Voters is really helpful is when you're trying to find someone and which riding or MP that they belong to. Your boss stands up in question period, and all of a sudden the phones light up from Alberta because they're mad at whatever current thing those pesky Liberals are doing. And trying to figure out where this person's from. You can probably find them on the voters list, and if there is a local MP you can direct them to, that all that information will be available to you on My Voters. So every task in CRM is based on one or multiple steps here. So the first one here is quick lookup. So searching for individuals one at a time, and you can kind of view their profile or update any information. Data entry. So again, CRM is only as good as the data you put into it. But those two steps make up the majority of things you'll do here. Then, of course, there's a create a list, which is basically a wider version of quick lookup where you can grab a list of people based off the data you've already entered. And there's also the CRM specific one here, which is managing casework, which is basically a special type of data entry. But given we'll cover that in much more depth, as it is what most of your constituency offices will likely be doing. So without any further ado, let's jump over into CRM. So this is what CRM will look like for you. Let me just jump into this profile. This is what you will see when you log into CRM. You'll see here it will have your name, not fake MP staffer, which is my name. The first thing to note here that you always want to look for is that all of your offices should be, when you come up here in the top right-hand corner, will say MP office : the name of your constituency, followed by your member's name. If it does not show up there, it means you are logging into the wrong place. It likely means you're using some other type of van account. Please log out and log into the correct location, or things will get wonky on you very fast, and we have to do a bunch of cleanup. It's really important that when you're on the Hill, you are in fact logging to CRM and only CRM. The other thing to look you have available to you here is your French and English toggle in the top right-hand corner. On the top left-hand corner, this is where you see the two sides, shared contacts and my voters. Shared contacts is yellow, my voters is blue. So if we want to jump over to my voters, we can just click on this tab over here on the top right. It won't look too much different for you here, but now if we're looking up, if we're looking anybody up, we'll be looking across the voters list as opposed to just the people that we have interacted with in the past in some capacity. So I'm going to jump back over here to shared contacts. That's where most of our training is going to live today. The first one we were mentioning here in terms of the those steps is basically your quick lookup. So this is where you would find it right here in the center middle of the screen. Create a list is right below that. Casework. Casework is kind of special, but if you're trying to find an individual case or do some reporting on casework, here's the module over here on the right hand side. It's called Manage Casework. And then if you are doing anything around targeted email, and targeted email is the newer email tool we rolled out, blanking on time periods here, but I want to say roughly 6 months ago, to all the MP offices. It is available. We have an entire training just on that tool. This is where you can find it. And if you're doing any MP events and you want to be doing tracking or posting them onto the MP website, underneath the events section over here is where you would find access to that, likely the create new event button. So that's the overview at a high level. So if we go over here to quick lookup, the first thing we're going to want to look up is, or we want to show you, is how to actually find someone. So let's say we are looking for last name starts with ST, first name is Ray. Go ahead and click enter there. And you'll see here, and just so we're all clear, this is 100% a made up fake MP committee. Our writing is left of center and our MP's name is Joe Schmo. So do not be surprised if none of the contacts actually make any sense or the casework is silly. You will have access to thousands, if not tens of thousands of individuals, not 60. But this is just where we can do some demo stuff and not mess up any of your office's actual data. So great, we found Ray Stantz. He actually lives in Guelph, and his email is ghostbusters@whoyougonnacall.org. So great, we found Ray. The other thing we can show you here is if you actually want to click this nice little change my settings icon, you can actually show up which columns show up, or change around which columns show up in your quick lookup. So if you find you're always looking for that van ID because it's easier for you to communicate information with your office with that unique ID for each individual, we can go ahead and move that up here. You just drag these around. Say we never actually, age isn't really helpful to us. We're going to pull that down. Or let's say you're finding you're doing a lot of stuff where writing is actually helpful because you're finding you're communicating with people outside of your constituency. You can drag that up into there. You can also change your default rows. One of my favorite hacks is it will slow down your system, but most pages in CRM you can change this for. So if, for example, on the Cradle list, you're tired of only showing 40, you can actually crank this up to 999. It will 100% make your page load slightly slower, but it does show more data for you on the front end. So I'm just going to put this back to 40 and hit save changes. So great, we found the guy we're looking for here. So let's go ahead and open up Ray. So here is where we will see Ray's individual constituent profile. So you'll see there's a lot of different sections here. And one of the first things I always suggest doing here is actually rearranging it to make it easier for you. You probably do not care about Ray's social media. That's not really helpful. What you probably do care about, for example, is his name. So you can go ahead and drag name up here, and let's expand name so we can, change any of that information if we want. I usually want addresses right up at the top. We do want that one expanded. And I also usually suggest doing phones or email because those are likely the pieces of information that you are coming here to view. So let's go ahead and expand them. And the other one I'm going to look here for is activist codes, because as we were talking about, activist codes are one of the main data points that we want to be tracking. So I'm going to go ahead and expand these, then come down here on this bottom right and say save page layout. And what that means is now whenever we come to any constituent's profile, this order and anything you've had opened will stay open for you and be available just for easier use. So as we can see here, here's the address. So he lives at 14 North Street in Guelph, Ontario. If for some reason if someone has moved around a lot and they've been communicated with across various offices over the last 20 or so years, whatever the case may be, you can actually say view address history, and you can see if we've entered various other addresses for them in the past. That'll show up there. The other thing that's also really helpful here is if you expand districts up here, will show you what riding they're currently in, as well as their polling division. Polling division probably isn't quite as helpful to you as riding, but if you are trying to pinpoint something on a map, polling division is helpful. And the other big one here is also at primary address. This means anyone who is at that main address that we're showing here, that 14 North Street. So here you can see that Egon Spengler, Peter Venkman, and Winston Zedmore all live with Ray. So I'm just going to say save page later again, just so those are always open for us. And of course, feel free to use any of these other options. Casework here is usually a big one that we like to have handy. And so if we expand casework here, we can see any open cases in your office that Ray has open. So we'll come back to that here in a second. Let's come back up here to the activist codes. And these are the main ones we'll be entering are these interest activist codes. And as we mentioned, they're really helpful for things like correspondence. So let's say the form letter of the day is, pick a topic here. Some environmental form letter from all your Greenpeace constituents, and you get the 400 dump at 4:30 on a Friday, because that's when all of these systems decide that political staffers have nothing better to do with their lives other than have their email system clog up with form letters. So when you get around to entering these, of course, you want to respond to the ones that are in your office, but it's probably actually useful here to be able to track what topics these people are interested in. So we can see here that Ray's he's already interested in specifically the environment and gun control. He's pro gun control. But say we want to add a new one, we come down here to the activist code section, click on this drop down, and you'll see all sorts of options. Our fake committee here has a subset of options. I think you guys have almost 300 various ones. If for some reason you find something that does not fit any of the existing ones, there is a form on InfoLib, which will show you, at the end of this training session on how to request an additional activist code. So let's say he's writing in, he's really concerned about some environmental issues. We already have environment, but let's say it is also about what's something that's environmentally themed here. It's the environment, but it's also fisheries and oceans. So we're going to go ahead and hit save new here. Feel free to add as many interest activist codes as relevant for whatever piece of correspondence you want to be tracking here. And of course, there are ways we have different training sessions on the ability to add many activist codes quickly to many of your constituents, which is specifically helpful for something like correspondence, where you have to reply to 400 constituents with roughly the same response, and you want to enter all of that data quickly into CRM. We have a training specifically on that, but if we're just doing something one-off, this is probably the fastest way. So great, we now know that Ray is interested in fisheries and oceans as well as environment. And what that lets us do later on is track things over time, but as well, if let's say Minister Guilbeault stands up in the House and announces a new government policy on hanging bicycles on walls. Every Canadian must now have bicycles on walls. And we want to communicate with our constituents who identified as bicycle on walls as their top priority. It would be really easy to run a list of similar environmental or biking priority interest activist codes, and then we can very easily either A, mail them a letter, B, email them using targeted email or some other piece of targeting information from this. And this is you can create a list in about 2 or 3 clicks, literally. And then, either send them an email through the email tool, but that'll be a hands-on piece of communication from your MP. And it's targeted, you're not just going to, notify them of here's the 17 things my MP did this week. You're actually communicating about something they told you in the past they're interested in. So that's a great way of building those relationships and staying in touch with the public. So that's how we would handle activist codes. The next one here is casework. So let's say we want to jump into, actually, no, sorry, before we get to casework, let's very quickly cover phones and emails. So again, we can already see here that Ray, because he came into our office at some point in time, we have his email as well as the phone number. If you want to add a new phone number, you go ahead and punch the number here, 905-555-5555. Select what type of phone it is here, cell, home, or work, and hit save new. It'll add a new phone number, as well as you're able to basically set the star means as the preferred phone number. So let's say you happen to have someone's work phone, but it's obviously easier to get a hold of them on their cell phone, and your member needs to get a hold of them. If you're using this preferred setting, it's just easier to know which one's which. And exactly the same thing goes with the emails here. We'll cover this more in depth in a different session, but the way emails work is if you do want to be actually emailing them through the email tool, you have to mark them as subscribed. So by default, any email that you add into the system will be marked as subscribed. The other option there is not subscribed, which is a confusing word because there's a third option, which is unsubscribed. Not subscribed is essentially neutral. It just means you are not going to actively email them. Probably not a whole lot of use case for most MP offices. And unsubscribed is they have actively clicked on an unsubscribed link in one of your emails. And we do not have the ability to bring them back from that. There is a way of doing it, but it involves some communication directly with the constituent actively opting in to re-receive your emails. We can cover that in a different session. But this is, again, if you want to add a new email address, you can go ahead and punch it in here and say save new. And then finally is the casework. So we can see that Ray has an open casework on something to do with federal grants. So if we go ahead and open up this case here, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Fraser here briefly to cover the casework in more depth. But as a high level here, we can see that Ray met with our MP, Mr. Schmo, to discuss defense funding for the ghost containment grid. He's very concerned about a large supernatural event on the horizon and their containment unit is getting full. So you can go ahead and, this is the kind of the high level summary when you're first opening a case, and Fraser will take it from here with some various examples on how to better handle the various things you can do from a casework function.
Hi, okay, so I'm going to share my screen over here. Okay, so first I actually want to go ahead and talk about how to add a new case. So we see Andrew mentioned the casework management tool over here. And it is perhaps confusing that the way you add a new case is not actually by first interacting with the management tool or the casework management tool, but instead by going to quick lookup, because how casework is assigned is that it is created from a person's profile. And so we want to look up the constituent that we're talking to or the person that we're talking to first, and then attach a casework to them, if you want to think of it like that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to look up everybody's favorite bat-based superhero, Bruce Wayne. Now you can go into here. So let's say, for instance, we look up Bruce Wayne and he is not already appearing in the shared contacts side of the database. You'll notice I've looked on the shared contact side. We first would want to create a shared contacts profile for Bruce. And the way we go about doing that is by searching to see if Bruce is on the My Voter side. So I can click the search the voter file, which will take exactly what I was searching before, but now search the voter file. And if one of these Bruces was the right Bruce Wayne that we're looking for, we can click them and add to shared contacts, and that will go ahead and add them directly to the shared contact side, copy all their information and put it over on the shared contact side. If none of these Bruce Waynes is what we are looking for, and that can happen, then there is this new button after we've searched the My Voter side. There's this new button that appears that says add new person, and you can add the person there. So I'm going to go back to the search shared contact side, because this is the Bruce I want to look at. And you'll see Andrew was doing this before, but as you can move these around. And if you're always looking for casework, the casework module to work with, I would suggest bringing it up to the top of the page and then clicking Save Page Layout. Okay. So when we drop down this casework, we can click the Add New Case button. And this is the only location to find the Add New Case button, is to find their profile on shared contacts, go to the casework drop down, and then click Add New Case. This will come to our new case screen. There's quite a bit of information to fill out. But for instance, we can say when exactly Bruce tried to contact us. So let's say Bruce sent us an email last Friday. And the open date of when I've opened this casework. So maybe actually it was very late in the day Friday and I wasn't able to open it until the next Monday. Contact direction, this was from the constituent. We'll imagine that Bruce sent us an email. I'll leave the case open and I'll leave the case manager as myself. I'll change this type from issue to case. There is this issue management tool, but as Andrew mentioned, we're suggesting more so that issues and interests and opinions be more are sometimes better used by activist codes. But Bruce has some case work that we are opening up with him. I'll choose subject. Bruce is also looking for federal grants. Disposition. Tracking the disposition of the constituent is a good idea, just to make sure that everybody, if several weeks or months go by until the next update, you'd like to at least remember how exactly your constituent was acting, which can best inform you on how you can approach any new updates in the case. So for instance, if Bruce was especially upset or hostile, maybe you want to act in a certain way, or if instead he is supportive or understanding, we may be able to act in some other way, right? Disposition of Bruce, this time he was just talkative. And we'll see he actually maybe talks a little bit too much. Okay, so he sent us an email. So I could either attach some file regarding that email, or I could just copy and paste the text. So I'm actually just going to copy this text I've written up. Bruce has written up, obviously. He sent us an email asking the Canadian government for a federal grant, which of course would be used for development of cheap and affordable clean drinking water, and certainly won't be used for any pursuits of vigilante justice on the streets of Gotham. And then by default, this follow-up date will be a week after today's date, but you can always change this to whatever you feel is correct. We'll follow up with Bruce maybe in the new year. Okay, so that's that. I can create this. So now this is Bruce Wayne. And this is the case that we just created with Bruce Wayne. Here's the introductory summary. In fact, actually the summary I could have added instead as just a summary of what the casework would be. and come in here and add a communication from the constituent. And that's where I could have added this email. Again, all communication type. I'll go ahead and cancel. At the top left corner of any casework, you also see the constituent's name again, but highlighted in blue, because it is a hyperlink, basically, that we can click back to their profile if we need some further contact information. So let's go on his profile, and we see that now this new casework is shown here in their casework module. Okay, so that's creating a new case. I'm going to go back to our home page and go back to that manage casework tool. And we can see, oh, look, there's that case that we just opened with Bruce Wayne. This case shows up, but not Andrew's case that he showed from the Ghostbusters earlier. Right now, that is because by default, there is some choices of these search filters that are chosen for you, but that you could also set yourself and change. So let's say I want to see all open casework in my office. Right now, it's only showing me the casework that is assigned to me specifically. If I wanted to see all open casework, I could clear this assigned to field. So now it doesn't matter who it is assigned to, and click refresh results. Now I can see all the casework, including that one from Ray Stans before. If I find that every time I'm going into the casework management tool, I'm always clearing the assigned to field because I always want to be looking at all open cases, then I could click this remember filters button, which will remember the search criteria I have specified right now, so that when I come back into, from the home page again, come back into the manage casework tool, it won't have that assigned to field populated. But actually, I do just want to show my cases. Oh, there's two of me here. I do want to remember that. Let's go through the other filters here in this search criteria. This case ID number, which is not shown here, but just as Andrew showed earlier, there is this blue cogwheel button, which I can click on. And anytime there's some sort of list, there will probably be this blue cogwheel button that you can go up and change what fields are shown in your list, and click save changes, come back here, and I see here's that casework ID number that I could search for instead. Status. There's several statuses that all kind of encompass a few, right? Because any overdue case is still an open case. So if I search for open, I'll also be including overdue. But if I only wanted to look for the overdue ones or the upcoming ones or the far in the future ones, I can search for those instead. Those are all based on the follow-up date. So anything that's overdue has some follow-up date in the past of like yesterday or before. Or you can look for closed cases, or there is this first row that is, it doesn't matter what the status is. I just want to look at all casework ever. From here, there's the date open from and to fields. So if I want to look for specific sets of specific list of casework that was all opened during 2020. I can look for anything that is opened from January 1st, 2020 to December 30th, 2020. Right. Bill prefix, bill number, bill pro con. This is all details from the issue tracker. I showed you before there are those two types. It is either casework, case type casework, or there is the issue / opinion. Case type, and this bill prefix, bill number, bill pro con applies to that issue type. Physical file name. This is for you to search physical file names in the casework. Similar to date open from and to, we could look at any casework where any action was made, not just when the case was opened, but if any action was made during this time, I could specify a date range. With these date ranges as well, if I just wanted to look at all cases from some certain date, you know, since the start of this year, I could search for just the date open from field and then click refresh results, and this would show me all casework since then. Again, we covered this aside to committee. This will always be your MP office committee type. This is that case versus issue case type. And again, searching for the specific case subject that we chosen, like the federal grants that we chosen before. I will also go over some of the report types up here. So let's actually get that full list, quite a few reports up here, or a few casework. So these long report and short report, these both are going to create text reports from the casework that is shown in the search field. So it's going to create reports based on the 3 that are shown here. Before, if there was only one being shown or only a subset, it would only create a report from those already being searched for. So I want to create a report. There is both long report and short report. So let me just give an example. This will be the first one in the list. So let me just show what this case looks like. There's some email from Santa Claus to MP Schmo, and then there's a few things, actions below that have taken place. So let's look what that, see what that looks like on the long report. So when I click long report, it brings us to this field, and I see all the summary info, contact info for Santa Claus, when it was opened, see the case ID, the case that we're working with, the summary info that I had entered when I first created the case. And then we also see summaries of each actions that have taken place. So first the case was open, then there was another email, then there was some other action that took place. And we see all of that. We see also up here, there's a print button, so I can print this whole sheet. And then we see that this kind of summary is repeated for each casework, showing both the first bit of information and then any actions that take place. Contrasted to the short report, when I click short report, it only shows that initial summary information. It doesn't show any of the actions below that have taken place or any of the subsequent actions. It just gives the initial information of each case in the list. And then finally, there is this export to Excel button, which is effectively the short report, but just in an Excel format. Or will be given as a Excel spreadsheet. Okay. Finally, I want to mention that there is more in-depth training about some of the actions that can take place on casework. I can go over one of those actions or two of those actions that we get most commonly these days. And right now, there are some things that are kind of hidden behind this add note action. That, for instance, if I want to just assign this case to a new casework manager, we can do this easily by the add note action. You see, I did this previously. By choosing the add note action, I can change who this case is assigned to. So I can actually change it to Fraser. Similarly, if this case was already closed and I actually want to open it again, you can still do any action, but you can specifically do the add note action and change this case status field to open. I'm just going to save this, action complete. Okay. There's further detailed training on casework that we will do in the coming months, unless you have attended one of our previous sessions of detailed casework tutorial. There is also a recorded casework session that you might be able to find on InfoLib under training, under liberal CRM. We'll have some recorded sessions there. Other than that, I will pass it back to Andrew, who I believe will continue on with some more demonstrations.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fraser. The last thing we'll cover here briefly today is the create a new list function. So we've shown you in general how to add activist codes when adding activist codes is helpful. But as we mentioned, let's say your boss wanted to send a letter out to everyone who was considered, maybe you want to send actually we had an MP office do this last week, 2 weeks ago, which I thought was a great idea, was anyone who had casework that came to their office in the past year, they wanted to pull a list of those individuals and send them basically a letter from the MP, following up to make sure that everything had gone well, if they had any additional questions from their office. So the way you do this would be through create a list. We'll stick pretty high level on this. We're not going to cover all the fields, but again, you can see here that there are many options available to you when creating a list. Similarly to the profile, you can actually rearrange these. You don't drag and drop them. You kind of click on these little stars and they'll fly to the top. So let's say, the ones that we care about usually are addresses, activist codes, maybe we care about email, as well as name and phones. And the other one here that we will cover that I always suggest is probably the most important box on this page because it trips everybody up, including myself, when I think the numbers are slightly off, is the suppressions one. So let's go ahead and bring the suppressions up. And if we go ahead and expand some of these, I always suggest leaving the suppressions expanded right at the top of your page. Just remember to change this. And what suppressions are doing is it'll take whatever the search step we're about to do and then, suppress individual results from that. So I usually, for the most part, want to say just remove all suppressions. Unless we are doing a mailing list, we probably don't care about either incomplete or bad addresses. We probably want to exclude anyone who's passed away from our list for the most part. So we'll go ahead and add exclude deceased back. And again, unless we're creating a phone bank or a phone list or a mailing list, we don't care about removing do not call or do not mail. Do not mail refers to snail mail. If for some reason someone said, please do not mail me any more items, this is not the email. The email is handled by the individual subscription status on that email address. Okay, great. So the number, let's just expand some of these and we'll walk through a few of them super quickly here. You got your address where you can select individual people in your writing. So let's say we're just going to stick in Guelph for my theme here. Great, we can only care about individuals in Guelph. And let's say we want to grab everyone who is super interested in childcare. That's topical. So great, if we go ahead and run this list, this will grab us anyone who lives in Guelph we've added this interest childcare activist code to. I know for a fact that none of those exist in our current demo here, so we won't do that. But let's say we did run that list, and now we also wanted to add people who, for whatever reason, has a different activist code or has casework. So again, casework is actually one of these options. So you can come in here and say, give me everyone who is interested in the case subject of, like, let's do a lot of Canada Post complaints. We can go ahead and pull all the Canada Post cases. The way we do that, you probably don't want to do it all in one step because that gets pretty messy, is you come down here, you select your first criteria. So again, let's say we wanted everyone in Guelph who was, let's just say environment, interest, environment. Come down here to add step and say we can now either add additional people to our search. We can remove people from all the preceding steps. Let's say we wanted all the environment people, but we did not want anyone who is specifically interested in fisheries because it's a separate issue that we don't want to step on. We can come in here and say remove individuals. Again, we're going to remove all suppressions here and then come back down to activist codes and say interest, was it fisheries? I believe we added fisheries notions. So that'll give us everyone who's from Guelph who's interested in the environment and remove anyone who's interested in fisheries from that list. The other options that we have here are basically the most common ones are narrow. So let's say we wanted to run this list and then we only wanted people who have a phone number so that our boss can call them. So coming down here into phones, we'll expand phones here. And the way you would do this, you would say, we only want people who have a phone type of cell or home or work, whatever the case may be. And then we can preview this. We've got a grand total of 4 people in our very tiny list of, we only have 60 people, I think, in the entire constituency. Ideally, you'd have more, or you could keep building through your list like this. Again, we do have training going in depth on how to do this with more specific examples, but at a high level, that's how it works. And then we can come in here and say run search. This will actually load those results into our list. So great. Bruce Wayne, Winston Zedmore, looks like Robin as well as Batgirl are also very concerned about environment, but have no interest in the fisheries. And then, of course, what we have up here is we could print this list. We could actually request an export, which these all need to be approved. But if you're doing a mail out and you want to get a household mailing list, if you click this export button, there's actually an option to household this into an Excel format. And then you work with us to get it exported. If you want to print labels directly, if, like, say you have your own letters and you just want to sticker envelopes, you can do that right from here. Or we could actually save this list and then import this into the email tool to go ahead and use targeted email. And I see Dylan eyeing me here, so, or at least I think he's eyeing me. I think we're right on time for the 50-minute mark, so we'll leave it there. Was there any questions? I didn't see, I haven't been following the chat. Do you have time to answer a few of these questions, Dylan, or?
I think we can maybe take one question. I'm sorry, we're just running up tight against the next session, but I'm also going to put the CRM support contact information in the chat so folks can follow up on their own time as well.
Sure.
Please go ahead with the question.
I'll put this up on the screen here while we go through it. Fraser, is there anyone that you haven't answered yet by any chance? Okay, sorry, here's one here we can grab. on the email blast, is there a new way in which we can input these emails quicker than one person at a time? The member's looking to contact multiple constituents a week. Is there an option for the member to track which residents in the riding have been called and recorded? Yeah, absolutely. So we won't have time to cover in depth, but there's basically a bunch of options to load data here. Quick mark is basically a quick lookup, but you can quickly add one piece of information. That's usually how we suggest going about it for correspondence. You would say everyone's inserted in the environments. We want to automatically add this activist code, and we just open up the profile and quickly add the email address. Because the email address is specific, there's no way of just bulk applying that to everyone. That will still always be a one-off basis, but there we can show you a few tips on the different session on how to do that. But the way that you would actually track who has been called is basically if we open up any one of these profiles here. Let's say Batgirl, we haven't called Batgirl. Underneath the contact history here is you can actually just add it. So you can see here that I actually added her email on last month on the 31st, or 2 months ago on the 31st, into the system. So if you actually want to make a phone call here and you just want to record that so you could run a list to remove them later on, you'd say add new contacts. You can say when they were contacted, a time if you actually cared, who contacted them. And then in this case, you would come down here and just say, okay, great, the member gave them a call, and any notes from that call, whether, in this case, they were canvassed just means you actually connected with them. It doesn't actually mean canvass in the political sense. And you could add any notes to that. There is also another interesting feature we're kind of working with the developer on for follow-ups that will probably have some interesting things on in the new year. If you wanted to actually be tracking call lists for your member and the status of all those calls. But I think with that, guys, if you have any further questions, please flip us an email at crmsupport@infolib.ca, and we'll definitely get to them after the session.
Thanks very much, Andrew and Fraser. That was great. We appreciate your time, and we will see you back here later in the week for some additional training. So thanks for the presentation, and thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.